right, it's 1 minute past the scheduled time for this session. Welcome everyone to this session on lessons from the Africa Internet Rights Alliance on protecting digital rights in Africa. My name is Ashna Kalemera. I'm with the Collaboration on International ICT Policy for East and Southern Africa, based in Kampala, Uganda. And I am one of your hosts for this evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you're joining us from.
Thank you, Ashna. My name is Benga Sheson. I'm your co-host this morning, afternoon, or evening, and I'm the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative.
Thank you, Benga. Once again, thank you for joining us, participants. As a way of introductions beyond myself and Benga, we will have other members of the Africa Internet Rights Alliance from across the continent introduce the Alliance and its work. Oh, now my screen share has disappeared.
So once again, welcome to the virtual IGF. We're still in 2020, obviously. You know, we're in 2020 when everything happens online. And just as we wait for the video to start, I trust that people will be able to ask questions. So please, if you have a question, please don't wait. Just go ahead and use the question and answer function to post a question. It may be answered right there, or we may be able to attend to it.
Thank you, Benga. So introducing
each month, more than 500 million Africans access the internet.
That's more than all the internet users in North America and Middle East combined.
And the number continues to grow.
As the internet and digital technology become more and more integrated into all aspects of life,
the inequalities and challenges we face online are reflected offline.
We face new challenges to our human rights in the digital context,
including unequal access, censorship, and violence online.
We must work together to ensure that everyone's rights are protected and respected.
The African Internet Rights Alliance, AIRA, envisions an Africa where digital rights are upheld in all aspects of life, governance, and the economy, ensuring equity and prosperity across the continent.
Our work is rooted in 4 values: accountability, transparency, integrity, and good governance.
Using these values as a guide, AIRA undertakes collective interventions and executes strategic campaigns that engage the government, private sector, media, and the civil society.
Our goal is to institute and safeguard privacy and data protection,
affordability, and access to the internet,
access to information, and freedoms of assembly, expression, and the press.
AIRA is comprised of 9 civil society organizations based in countries across the continent,
West,
East,
and Southern Africa.
These include Amnesty International,
Article 19, Eastern Africa,
Budget,
Center for IP and IT Law at Strathmore University,
Co-Creation Hub,
IPESA,
Kictonet,
Legal Resources Center,
and Paradigm Initiative.
We are building a movement to establish, advance, and protect digital rights for all on the African continent.
So join us.
Rejoignez-nous.
Jiunge nasi.
Join us.
The wonderful faces you have seen are the membership of the Africa Internet Rights Alliance from Uganda to Nigeria, from Nigeria to South Africa, and Kenya and beyond. 9 organizations with unique experience and expertise that have come together to advance digital rights on the continent through documenting developments, engaging stakeholders, including state and non-state actors.
And the mission of AIRA, as you can see, and as I'm sure you can almost tell from what you've listened to, include the following. Apart, we're collecting interventions and executing strategic initiatives to promote privacy and data protection, affordability and access to the internet. Of course, that's something that we all should be concerned about, especially as we see lockdowns or even post-lockdown, but during this pandemic, and people need to learn, work, and do everything online. Access to information and freedoms of assembly, expression, and the press. Some of the work we've done together include writing and distributing a digital rights terminology document for journalists. And of course, in addition to that, we also hosted a webinar on digital rights, COVID-19, and elections across Africa. And I'm sure that everyone has heard stories from Tanzania, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Guinea over the last few days. This is the reason we have these conversations. We've also sent joint letters to the United Nations and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights regarding at least two things. One is the Kenya Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, and the second is the Nigerian Cybercrimes Act. In addition to those, we facilitated, a joint social media campaign aimed at governments who have unfairly detained journalists. We've supported the creation of the draft declaration of freedom of expression and access to information. And of course, we continue to engage with the media on digital rights challenges and opportunities, from explaining what digital rights is, talking about some of the experiences in various countries work aim, to also asking that everyone should definitely be a digital rights advocate.
For more on our... Sorry, Benga, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so Ashna will take it home and tell you how you can contact us before we talk to another member of ours who is on this chat with us. Over to you, Ashna.
Thank you, Benga. So as he has indicated, you can read more about our work and our membership, and hopefully join our movement to establish, advance, and protect digital rights across the continent. On the web, we are www.aira.africa. On Twitter, we are @AIRA_Africa. Facebook, Africa Internet Rights Alliance, and we are also on LinkedIn. Thank you. I will stop sharing my screen now and move into the second half of this session, where we will introduce our panelists and ask them to turn their videos on if they already are not on. Sigi and Edwin, there you are.
So we have Sigi with us today, and Sigi is going to answer all questions, tough, not tough, and everything else.
Sigi.
Thank you, Ashna.
So, maybe I can say a bit about Sigi before we continue. She's a digital policy consultant at Article 19 East Africa. She was a fellow of Google Policy Program and the African School on Internet Governance. And in 2019, she provided direct support to Vice Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and directly contributed to the revised Declaration of Principles of Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa. She is passionate about everything expression rights and their interdependence with other human rights and their lived implications. You can tell Sigi is excited.
Yes, she is. And thank you so much for joining us, Sigi. Our second panelist is having difficulty joining, but in the meantime, I think we will proceed as we also welcome questions via the chat function. So, Sigi, why digital rights? Why everything expression, like Benga has indicated? What attracts you to this? Why not other human rights or other causes? There's very many of them.
Thank you, Ashna, and thank you, Benga, for that fantastic introduction. Hello to everyone. I think one of the core mantras that the IRA coalition has been pushing as early as the early and mid 2000s is breaking down this perception that digital rights are separate and distinct from from this wide spectrum of human rights. And I think the core mantra that we have been pushing for is just magnifying that digital rights are human rights. And IRA members have been advocating quite fiercely on this particular front across the African continent. For the IRA members, digital rights are the unseen, the nuanced thread that essentially ties all of these crucial rights together. And as you mentioned earlier, it forms part of the IRA's vision, where digital rights are upheld in all aspects of life, of governance, of the economy, ensuring equity and prosperity across the continent. I think one of my personal messages that I like hammering, not just to myself, but also to the stakeholders that we engage, is that digital rights have become a permanent feature of everyday events, of everyday life. And we've seen this quite recently in countries, including Nigeria, and where many of the IRA members are based. And we continue to see individuals and communities harnessing the revolutionary power of the internet, of communication platforms, not just to express anger and frustration and to push back against police brutality in the offline world, but also as a facilitator of their digital rights to expression, which Article 19 advocates quite fervently for, to access information, to freedom of assembly and association. And so, to IRA and to the members who constitute IRA, digital rights are not just instrumental because of what they permit, but also because of what they facilitate in the online and the offline worlds. And I think that this overlap and the enabling force is one of the core strengths of digital rights. And so, just based on this picture, it becomes easier to understand why guaranteeing, why promoting, why fulfilling these rights is so crucial. Yes, I think I'll stop off my response of that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sigi. So, Ashna, I'm going to ask you this question. So you have the pleasure of being with CEPESA, which is the coordinating organization for IRA, and the question is: so what do you think is the benefit of our collaboration? What impact can this our partnership and other coalitions we work with on digital rights have when we face multiple challenges from multiple actors? Because it's not just about government. There's also the fact that at times private sector is also a player in the halting economy. So what have you seen as a coordinating organization and also as an expert in this area regarding the benefits of collaborating?
Thank you, Benga. The organization I represent, its first word is collaboration, and we live and breathe collaboration at CEPESA. And for reasons that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, collaboration, there are various synergies that partners bring on board, various experiences. It avoids duplication of efforts and efficiency in leveraging resources that are very often limited in this space. There is an African saying, or a saying, I don't know if it's really African, that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is as relevant to the digital rights space as it is to any other human rights cause. Since you asked me a question, Benga, I will ask you the next. I've said all the rosy things about collaboration. What are the barriers or challenges in partnerships and coalitions in advancing digital rights, and opportunities in overcoming those challenges?
Yeah. Thanks, Ashna. So, I think there are three key things. One is trust, the other is resources, and the third is the people. In terms of trust, you need trust to be able to work together. One of the things that helps us at IRA and any other coalition that Paradigm Initiative has worked with is that we're not just people who are interested in digital rights, but we've literally become friends. We trust the intention of one another is to work towards a particular objective. So it becomes very easy for us to trust each other. Trust is the currency of collaboration. The other is in terms of resources, which also ties with the point of people, because in a way, people are also resources. I mean, I love not to say people are resources because you don't want to spend people or use people, but in reality, the fact that we can marshal our resources, Article 19 with CPESA, with PAIN, with budget, with CCOP can say, you know what, guys, we're interested in this one thing. Let's pull our resources together, such that 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 is not even 4 anymore, it's now 40. And that, I think, is how, so these are some of the challenges, that we could have. If there's a lack of trust, then there's an impossibility around collaboration. And if resources are limited or they don't exist, then there's a major problem. And in terms of people, if there are no, individuals who are willing to champion this cause, because like they say, everybody expects somebody to do it, so nobody gets it done, and then we blame everybody.
Thank you, Benga. Sigi, I'll pose the next question to you. When assessing digital rights, what are the current trends in the different regions of the continent?
Sorry, I seem to have misplaced my mute button. Thank you for that fantastic question, Ashna. I think one of the core points that AIRA magnifies, and this is replicated in our expansive membership across the continent, is that contextualization is key. And this contextualization is important not just across the regions, but also at the sub-regional level, as well as the individual state level, because each country has its strengths and each country has its weaknesses. And one of the common trends that has continued to impact all of a majority of countries on the continent is the COVID-19 pandemic. And that has consequently affected how countries react to, promote, and fulfill digital rights. So I think, just generally speaking, all 9 AIRA members continue to push for more rights, for more spaces, for more platforms to enable digital rights on the continent. We have seen that a majority of countries on the continent, including Ethiopia, Tanzania most recently, are set to either host elections during this year up until 2024 and moving forward. One of the core issues that we have noted here that continues to be replicated across all of the regions of the continent is the issue of internet shutdowns. In this particular context, we see the challenge of different countries, as I mentioned before, have different nuances and different approaches to dealing and promoting digital rights. And so our membership permits us to address issues such as internet shutdowns using contextualized approaches. Some of the other trends that we have noted across the region includes the adoption of licensing requirements in countries like Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in South Africa, as well as digital taxation regimes, which continue to have an impact on nascent digital economies across the continent. One of the other issues that we have noted is the use of contact tracing technologies as a means of addressing or tackling the COVID-19 pandemic. And naturally, we are aware of the surveillance challenges, privacy and data protection challenges within this particular context. And so these are some of the issues that the AIRA members continue to observe across all of the regions of the continent. This list obviously is not exhaustive. There are other issues that AIRA members continue to tackle with. Yes, thank you, Ashna.
Clearly. Thank you so much, Sigi. And I'll come back to you again. So we have only 10.5, almost 11 minutes left on this very short but productive call. And we have 2-in-1 questions from Oluwato Dimu Ankole. So he says, how recognized, he or she says, how recognized or influential would you say AIRA is in the advocacy of free speech on the internet in Africa? Also, is AIRA involved in the current issues in Africa? For example, the protest against the regulation of social media in Nigeria. And if I could just add the part B to it, also, what are the major tools or strategies that AIRA uses to achieve objectives? So it says here, I think I picked up collaboration. I'm not sure if there are other strategies. So Are we involved with things on the continent, including my own country, Nigeria? And what tools and strategies are we using?
Benga, is that question for me?
Yes, Sigi.
Okay, perfect. I'll provide the preliminary responses, and I'm sure yourself and Ashna will be able to jump in. I think on the issue of our recognition and our influence, even before the alliance became formalized, various members of the network had already commenced working on various projects, as I mentioned, going as far back as the early and the mid 2000s. And one of the focus areas that AIRA members focused on back then and continue to focus on today is the issue of freedom of expression, not just on online platforms, but also in the offline world. And so, going to answer the question of, are we involved in current issues in Africa? We are absolutely involved in issues, current issues in Africa. The coalition consists of organizations and individuals who are at the forefront of not just of digital rights issues, but also of issues affecting corruption, of issues affecting protests. Benga, as I'm sure you'll point out, Paradigm Initiative, amongst the other AIRA members who are based in Nigeria, as well as AIRA members who are based outside of Nigeria, continue to push back, continue to promote a dual usage, not just of as I mentioned earlier, of communications platforms and the internet, but also of merging these two, these online and offline tools as an effective means of pushing back against and contributing to current social, political, and economic issues across the continent. Going to the issue of tools and strategies, collaboration, yes, is one of our core tools and strategies, Benga and Ashna, as you mentioned earlier. But I think I also want to magnify that the coalition is also at the forefront of producing research, as I'm sure our extensive websites and extensive publications will allude to. We are also at the forefront of advocacy efforts. So this includes engagements with governments, engagements with regulators, engagements also with other organizations and coalitions across the continent. And so, as you mentioned, Ashna, we don't operate as using very siloed responses. We use multifaceted tools and strategies that enable us to effectively and appropriately and contextually promote digital rights on the African continent.
Thank you, Sigi. Ashna, so I don't see any other question from our participants. Oh, one just came in. Okay, well, Ashna escapes. I was going to ask Ashna the toughest questions since the COVID lockdown started. So Mukaberi Amirosin says, hello everyone. How do you want to ensure Africa's digital rights at the international level when digital platforms are not responsible under international law regarding their behaviors in global arena? Sigi and Ashna.
Thank you, Benga. Please don't forget to speak about the social media in Nigeria part of the question that Sigi answered before. In response to that question, part of AIRA's engagements leverage human rights mechanism under state obligations at the continent level through the Africa Commission of Human and People's Rights, but also at the United Nations level. As was mentioned previously in the presentation, our work has involved engaging special rapporteurs under those two mechanisms I just mentioned, as well as providing input to a draft declaration at continent level. So our engagements are both at national level and at regional level from the state perspective, but also at continent level and international level under the human rights review mechanisms of the Africa Commission on Human and People's Rights and also the United Nations.
Thanks, Ashna. So now that you've, okay, Sigi, please go ahead and I'll come back to talk a bit about social media in Nigeria.
Thank you, Benga. I think the question about holding digital platforms responsible under international law is a very pertinent one. It is a question that continues to perplex countries and governments across the world. I think one of the core points that I want to magnify here is, and just building onto what Ashna had stated, is irrespective of I think the core point that I want to magnify is that private entities and private actors and platforms have responsibilities under international law mechanisms, and this has been promoted quite fervently by the United Nations in their business and human rights guiding principles. How effective these mechanisms are in terms of holding these platforms and these private sector, actors and entities is a completely different question, and I think that this is one of the areas, and I'm sure Benga and Ashna will support me in this. Is one of the areas where we would appreciate, where we would want to collaborate with other actors and other entities to effectively address these problems.
Thanks, Ashna and Sigi. So what I will do is I'll take one of those questions and then I'll combine that I'll use an example from social media regulation process in Nigeria. Someone has asked here, Jazia says, how can the youth be more involved? Because something I've noticed with civil society in Africa is that youth are not involved if they're not specialized in that field. Let me use the social media regulation process and the campaign against that in Nigeria as an example here. Paradigm Initiative and other partners are providing information about the process, the issues, and the likely solutions. And now, because young people are the ones that have the lived experience, what that then does is that they can take the information from organizations like Paradigm Initiative that are working on this and use that in their own way of voicing up and speaking up and saying, we don't want social media controlled because we use it to learn, we use it to connect, and things like that. I'll say two things. One is that young people must not wait to be invited by civil society to get involved. It is your lived experience. So use the tools and resources available through civil society organizations to advance your cause. And the second is to say that if you checked out the average age of AIRA members, it will be quite interesting. I mean, just look at Sigi. So I may look on the 40+ side, but you can tell from Sigi involved. And Ashna, do you want to take the question by our friend Consulate?
Was the question shared in the chat?
Yes, it says, how do you plan to work with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights? Do we plan to host sessions during the virtually or face-to-face?
As previously mentioned, we are already engaging with the Africa Commission on Human and People's Rights, where we provided statements or joint letters with regards to problematic legislation in Kenya and in Nigeria. Such engagement will continue, as will our work in making stakeholder submissions as part of the periodic review mechanisms that the Human Rights Commission undertakes for every member state.
Maybe I can just chime in just to add on to what Ashna has stated. I think one of the other components that I really want to magnify is, just going back to the issue of the joint letters, that we're already engaging regional mechanisms. We're already engaging the African Commission's special mechanisms, especially the mechanism on freedom of expression, access to information, and just building on the work that has already, that was done during previous periods in terms of contributing to the declaration, but also in terms of promoting the implementation of this particular declaration, either as a coalition or as individual members across the continent.
Thank you so much, Sigi. We are out of time. Very fruitful conversations. Obviously, we could go on and on, but I'd like to thank you, Sigi, particularly for being our panelist on the spot. Thank you to my co-moderator, Benga, for becoming a panelist along the way. Thank you to the audience for participating and attending this session. Please follow AIRA on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where we can share more on our engagements and efforts and opportunities for collaboration. We are open to engage with many more organizations and share news about the various developments on internet rights across the continent. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your days, mornings, evenings, and nights in some cases, and all the best to the rest of the IGF. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asante Sana.
Thank you.